on the open market. So instead of just selling to people who you know or people who have worked with you for a while, you can open it up a little bit, and people who might hear about it would approach you, and then you sell to them. That's just as simple as it gets. The fifth point is to sell to another business. And here we see a lot of mergers and acquisitions in our country as well. We saw the Trust Bank with EcoBank. We saw Tigo and Airtel in recent times. And we've seen several other mergers and acquisitions taking place. In this particular task, you are selling your business to another business, usually a competitor or a supplier or someone who has something to do along the value chain. Interestingly, nowadays, a lot of businesses have, in the Western world, their objective as a business is to build a profitable enterprise and sell to another profitable enterprise. And a lot of entrepreneurs make a lot of money in this particular approach. They build a business that is worth 10 million, and yet another company acquires that business for 100 million, and they are excited all the way to the bank. So this is another route where a lot of entrepreneurs are exploring, building what we now call buyable businesses, businesses that are bought by already established brands, and businesses that have a strong network that can take the vision of the organization far. In fact, in some parts of the world and in some deals, some transactions, those who buy the business also request that the entrepreneurs who started the business work with them at least for a while before they eventually leave the company. So this is a fifth option. Finally, the last option is doing an IPO. An IPO is an initial public offering. And what do I mean by initial public offering? I'm sure you heard Talo was selling shares some years ago, and several other companies have floated shares. The initial public offering is the first time that a company is making an appeal to the general population to come and buy shares or stakes in their company. And that initial appeal to the public is referred to as the initial public offering. And that is when they want to get listed on the stock market. After that, every other share you buy in that company is what we call the secondary market. So the initial public offering takes place in the primary market. And this is one route where a lot of entrepreneurs can actually look forward to cashing out in their businesses. And a lot of people have made so much money by listing their businesses on the stock exchange. Particularly in Ghana, we've seen very few of these things. And there is now an alternative stock exchange market for companies that are not at large to list on the real Ghana Stock Exchange, so that those companies can actually groom themselves to list on the Ghana Stock Exchange in the future. So this is an option for a lot of entrepreneurs to explore, to understand, and to see whether they can list their stocks, they can list stocks of their company, so that others can also be able to purchase these stocks. Now, we want to talk about succession planning, or what we refer to as transgenerational entrepreneurship. Simply, your father has run a business for about 50 years. He's on retirement now. He's very old. He can barely walk. He wants to hand over the baton to you so that you can also take the baton and run that same business. Now, in terms of succession planning, it can be within the family or outside the family. And this is one crucial issue that we need to understand, particularly the informal sector of Ghana. Pause. I should have drank your water. Well, I realized my voice was breaking. I said I was drinking a lot of water today. I'm not. Okay. So, succession planning or transgenerational entrepreneurship is handing over the baton from one generation to the other. It can be a family-run business, or it can be handing over from a family member to a non-family member. And as the slides unfold, we understand why succession planning is absolutely important. Now, very often, and it's actually the norm in our part of the world, particularly for a lot of sole proprietorship businesses, as we've come to learn, that when the founder dies, the business dies. When the founder leaves the stage, the business actually leaves the stage. And you can imagine the number of businesses that have gone out of business because the founders have moved on or the founders have passed on. This should not be the case if you want to develop as a nation. Globally, the statistics on succession planning are bad, no matter the country in which you find yourself. But within the informal sector of Ghana, we seem to find the statistics to be a little bit leaning better than that in the formal sector. Now, the point is that only 30% of first generation businesses survive into the second generation. It means that if there are 100 companies today, only 30 of those 100 companies will be able to hand over to a second generation. And out of that 30, only half of them will be able to move on onto the next generation. And these are big issues that we need to understand as businesses. Why do we have no succession planning? Why don't we have succession plans? This is a big issue across the globe. Why don't businesses plan? 78% of all founders intend to pass their companies to their children. They have a very good intent. They would pass on their businesses. 78%. They would pass on their businesses to their children. And 85% of small business owners want their children to join them in business. And I'm sure if your father is running some business or your mom is running some business, I'm sure you've worked with your mom on that business at a point in time, or your dad on that business, or your uncle on that business at a point in time. 85% of our parents want us to join them in their businesses. And 85% of us want our children to join us in our businesses. But what are the real numbers when it comes to succession planning? The numbers are saying that unfortunately, only 25% of businesses have a formal succession plan, which means that 75% of businesses do not have a succession plan, and therefore they just have a wishful thinking. 78 of those who want to hand over to their children, just a wish, which never gets executed. So there are huge issues in succession planning, and entrepreneurs need to sit up and have a succession plan. But one might ask, why don't entrepreneurs plan in advance? It's the same issue. Why don't people write their wills in advance? And these are some myths that we'll try to understand. So we'll try and understand 5 myths with regards to succession planning. The first myth with regards to succession planning is that, entrepreneurs think that, look, there's plenty of time, I'm just 50 years old, I'm just 40 years old, I'm just 30 years old, and I can always hand over to my kids. I mean, when there's more time, there's more time. And even my kids are young, there's more time. And entrepreneurs keep on saying this and keep on tossing these words around. And before they realize, death is already knocking at their doors. Or their children get interest in other areas and they leave the business. Succession planning is absolutely important. It is a myth to think that you have more time. You need to start planning now as an entrepreneur. Not tomorrow, now. Some would even advise that you start planning yesterday, which means that you are late. Once you start the business, you need to have a succession plan in play. The second myth is that people think that, look, oh, it is easy just to sell the business. I mean, I can just sell the business anytime I want. And that really is not appropriate. It doesn't happen that easy. Lots of businesses struggle to sell. What is the right price you want to sell it? Who do you want to sell it to? How are they going to value your business based on how you are going to value it yourself? And at what time do you want to sell? Maybe the time you want to sell, nobody is interested in buying. And the time they are interested in buying, you might probably not be willing to sell. So the issues about selling, who are you going to sell it to and for how much? These issues are issues that entrepreneurs need to clearly understand and clearly speak to and think about that, look, it is not that easy selling your business. The third myth is a huge error. And entrepreneurs keep saying that the successor will be ready when I am ready. And this boils to the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs do not painstakingly become proactive, the whole succession planning issue. They think that their sons, their daughters, and their key employees will walk up to them and say that, look, I am ready, and we can start the succession process. Or they themselves will think that they will get to a point where they say, now I am ready to hand over. A lot of entrepreneurs must face the whole issue about readiness to hand over. People are just not ready to hand over their businesses. The fourth myth says that equal is synonymous with fair. That means that for several entrepreneurs, they might have 4 children, 3 children, and they think that they can equally share the company among these children, and the children will treat it fairly amongst themselves. But this is one of the biggest failures for succession planning globally. Because you might have 3 children, Kwesi, Kwame, and Ajua. And for all the 20 years, Kwame has been in the UK, Kwesi has been in the US, and Ajua has been with you working on the business in Ghana. And yet, when time comes for you to write a will or for you to declare who is going to take over your business, you decide to share the business among these 3 people equally, thinking that Ajua should be excited that she, being a third born or third born in the family, has equal shares with the first and second. Ajua, on the other hand, will say that, look, she has worked on this business for 20 years, 2 decades, while these people were seeking greener pastures or probably enjoying life somewhere. She was toiling with you. And this breaks up a lot of businesses. It brings a lot of conflict in businesses, a lot of conflicts in families as well. A lot of families get broken because of these issues. Equal is never, never synonymous with fair. Finally, a lot of entrepreneurs just hold on to it. They hold on to their businesses. The entrepreneurs represent the business and they take pride in the business they run. In fact, the entrepreneur is the embodiment of the business. He cannot hand over. He thinks that giving up ownership means he loses control over the business. He thinks that giving up ownership means he loses income over the business. But I want to ask you, do you know when Bill Gates retired from Microsoft? He has given up control over the business in terms of running and managing the business. But Bill Gates remained the richest man in the world today, even after his retirement. Which means that at Microsoft, they were able to have a good succession plan to make sure that people come and take over from where the leaders have paused or stopped or reached. So it's absolutely important for every entrepreneur to understand that when you give up ownership, it does not mean you've lost control. When you give up ownership, it does not mean you've lost income. And many are just afraid. Particularly in our part of the world and in sub-Saharan Africa, in Ghana, and in countries like Nigeria, and largely in Africa. People feel that, look, immediately I hand over this business to my children, immediately I write the will, they'll kill me so that they take the business because I'm wasting their time. And these are all myths that we need to confront. And some of these myths are very, very cultural. A lot of cultural beliefs and cultural ties to these myths. So as an entrepreneur, you need to free your mind of these things. You need to start planning succession now. Better still, your succession planning should have started yesterday. So with that said, we've come to the end of this lecture. This is Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship. We've had 12 weeks of videos on this course and 12 sessions in the PowerPoint presentation. The recommended text has also been made available to you. What we require of you is that you become very studious and steady. Remember that this course is not just about passing the exams. It's about learning to be able to build a business for yourself. And that is the more reason why we have put in a lot of links that can take you online to learn so much more. Because within 12 weeks, really, you can't learn everything about entrepreneurship in 12 weeks. But we have given you enough resources to make sure that beyond the lecture hall, beyond the Sakai platform, beyond the video slides, beyond the session slides, and beyond the video productions, you have so many resources available to you to make sure that you are going to build a business. Remember, starting a business is hard. But the benefits of entrepreneurship are numerous. Like we said in session 3, Dr. Boami mentioned that. So entrepreneurship is fundamentally, absolutely rewarding, but it's not easy to be an entrepreneur. We encourage you to be serious with this course and to be serious with every other course that you are taking in the University of Ghana. Thank you for being with us throughout these sessions. We hope to see you probably next year as well. Thank you.